So a few days ago in the Discord server, I decided to make a channel where people could drop all of their questions that they had for me. This could be anything from actual life questions to gaming, being a YouTuber, just whatever pops into your brain. Throw it my way and I'll answer it in a Q&A video. So here we are. Before we begin, there was quite a bit of overlap, so if your question didn't get answered, maybe it was because I've already answered someone else's that covers it, or I've already answered it in a different way, or maybe I just skipped over it because I had to be very picky. There were so many damn messages in there, there's no way I can answer all of you. I wonder how much regret I'm gonna have going through this, realizing I didn't put any limitations on what people could ask. Kicking things off with the very first message that was dropped into the channel. What day is it? Why, it's questions day, good cheese. Should I order pizza later? Now, I know this is a bit of a late answer for you, but yes. How tall am I? Yes. How's my day and how has life been in general? My day's been pretty good, actually. Very, long. You ever have those days where the day just feels like it goes on forever and ever because you're just doing a lot of stuff, but rather than being too quick, it's actually a lot slower than usual? How'd you get the name Beelz? Okay, so this one goes all the way back to about 2007, 2008, playing World of Warcraft, me and my little 17-year-old brain. So I was getting ready for Wrath of the Lich King, and me and some friends were moving servers, changing our names and getting new races for our characters and whatnot. I was already playing a male rogue at the time called Nightwalk, Night Elf. Very creative, I know. And I wanted to change and be a little bit different, so instead I went with female Night Elf because boobs. I really should have been human. I didn't understand every man for himself was going to become so busted. But anyway, I went with the name Beelz because I was looking up really cool, cringy, badass names, and I saw Beelzebub, and I thought, well, that sounds kind of cool. Tried it, it was taken, I cut the name in half, went with Beelz, it sounded short and snappy, and I noticed that a lot of the coolest people who played the game had really short, quick, 1 or 2 syllable names and nothing too dragged out. I used it, it stuck ever since, and you know how names just carry through and stick with you across the internet, especially if you know, choose to keep using them? Yeah, that's how. Will there be any genuine questions? Some, hopefully. What are your favorite items in Skul, physical and magical? So, my favorite items in most games are ones that aren't necessarily just a raw stat stick, but something that has a tangible effect, whether visibly noticeable or not. So, for physical, it might be Gunpowder Sword, just because of how much I've used it and how synonymous it is for me with a lot of physical damage builds. I don't get to use it as much anymore because RNG doesn't favor me in that way as much with all the new items been added, but back when it was mostly just physical damage items with Gunpowder as its main damage source, like, you gotta remember back in the day, Gunpowder was leagues above everything else before Hope Slasher and the rest of the physical boys came in to kind of pick things up. Back then it was like Gunpowder and Rear Blast was the best thing that you could possibly get. But yeah, I do enjoy items that have fun interactions more than anything else. Magic-wise, I'm really enjoying the new Demonomicon, things like that, or Magical Knife, or the effect of the mana, the gravity mana generator where you throw your head and as a little skull and a little explosion on the ground, or Mage's Necklace, things like that. I really like those. I've never been much a fan of passive flat damage increases or flat stats. It's like playing an RPG or an MMO and you've got talents, and your choice is, do you want to put points into improved damage, 10% more damage, 20% more crit, 50 more life? Those things are always incredibly useful and are always the most impactful long term. But for me, I've always had a soft spot for something that would read, have a 5% chance to summon a goat that headbutts a nearby enemy. That to me just sounds hilarious and is something I want to see. What's your least favorite game you have played recently? Barland Wonderworld. It's not a real game, you can't convince me of it. Any interest in Tekken 8? Just saw Lars' trailer and it's looking hype. I like Tekken. I played Tekken 3, Tekken 2, and a brief bit of Tekken 4 when I was younger. But Tekken is the kind of thing where I don't think it's very easy to enjoy it as much on a casual level, which is how I'd have to play it these days. I just don't have the time to invest in the ultimate grind anymore. But Tekken I would consider as one of the hardest games, fighting game-wise, and probably one of the hardest games, period, to like really master and get into. People who compete at the top level of that game have brains so big, they should be running the planet, right? Least favorite Skul to play with, it's kind of a tie between Yaksha and Gargoyle, for somewhat different reasons. I don't think Gargoyle is necessarily weak, it's just that his floatiness kind of makes him hard to control, and there are a lot of attacks and abilities in the game that will hit you if you don't have pinpoint movement. I know that the sisters with the lightning across the screen, some of Dad's attacks with the thorns from the ground, And just in general, there are a few things that Gargoyle, like he slips on ice a lot, and he'll like slide into damage sometimes, you know, completely outside of your desire to do so. You'll try and stop on the spot, and it's a little bit tricky. I know there's ways to get around that, but in the heat of the moment, I'm slipping and sliding, dude. And Yaksha, we know why I don't like Yaksha. What got me into Skul? Was it a gateway game that was a roguelike, or did you just happen to come across it? I found it by happenstance, and I believe this is just all thanks to Steam recommending it to me one day. I'd previously played things like Rogue Legacy, Dead Cells, a bit of Gungeon, stuff like that, and so my Steam was already kind of predisposed to recommending me similar roguelike games, and because of Dead Cells and the time I'd spent in that game prior, it was like, hey, this new game Skul's just released in early access, want to give that a go? And I think it was actually sometime around my birthday or Christmas, because my birthday's in November and Christmas just after. It was around that time I was looking at like winter Steam sales and stuff like that, and Skul is there, and it's like, hey, it looks really fun. I like the art style, the presentation, I'll pick it up. Complete chance. Hey Beelz, how many humans and animals live with you? In total, there are 5 humans and 4 animals in the house. For animals, we have 2 cats and 2 dogs. If you can have one type of dessert for the rest of your life, what will it be, and why is it chocolate Bavarian cake? I love that Atlas knows me that much, that he's picked up on this info over the course of the past couple of years, that he just knows that chocolate Bavarian is what I go for. But in all honesty, if it was for the rest of my life, maybe a light chocolate mousse. It's not too heavy, not too rich, it's tasty while also not being overly filling. I think that would have the best longevity for me, instead of a Bavarian, which would very quickly kill me. Do you ever plan to do a face reveal? Funny enough, yes. It's just, it comes down to timing. You know, it has to be the right time to do so. It's not necessarily that I'm opposed to showing my face or anything, it's just that the branding of the channel has become that. And I've long struggled with the idea that if I suddenly do a face reveal, that it would change the perception of the channel, how the content is presented, and how people like to enjoy it. I know it's kind of like if you've ever listened to music, right? And you've always thought, oh, this is really cool music, and then you like look up the band or your favorite actor, you know, that you watch in movies, and then you find out what they're really like, and you look them up outside of acting or outside of just listening to their music, and you suddenly don't like them as much, or your favorite voice actor. And then once you've seen them and you've heard their real voice, you can't disassociate anymore. It's kind of like that. I don't want to ruin it for people by having my face there. So I've kind of had the idea that when I inevitably do a face reveal, it probably isn't going to be the kind of thing that sticks. It's not something where I'm going to be doing Skul runs with my face on the screen unless it's very heavily requested. It'd most likely be I use my face for videos, maybe more like this, when I'm just doing like little side content here and there to answer questions or do little dumb things. But for the majority of the time, it would just be what we've already got right now. Do you plan to maybe, once in a lifetime, play multiplayer games and shooters on your channel or your Twitch streams? So I've done a few multiplayer games over the course of the past couple of years, depending on, you know, whether or not the streamer able to participate. We've done a bit of Squid Game, we've done some stream games, just, you know, mucking around with the audience, getting in some participation in. Multiplayer, more specifically things like the recent Rumbleverse, rest in peace, you were too young, and DNF duels, so fighting games, we messed around with a little bit on stream as well. But the biggest issue is that a lot of multiplayer games for viewer engagement kind of boils down to battle royales for a lot of people. They want to play things like Fortnite and stuff like that, where they can all jump in and kind of participate en masse, which is very difficult, and which is why we kind of went with Squid Game when it first came out, and then more recently, there was a few streams ago, we did some more Squid Game, and it was a lot of fun just being able to hang out and talk to people, with everyone having their cameras and not their cameras, their microphones activated, so they could all talk to each other at the same time. That kind of stuff was a lot of fun, but games like that are kind of far and few between. I know that there was a little bit of a push towards things like Among Us a while ago, just getting like some of the mod stuff and the bigger names in the community like Fraud, etc., to come in and play some Among Us with me. We did some Pico Park and some what was that other one called? The Mario Party one. I've actually forgot. Pummel Party, Pico Park and Pummel Party. We did some of those a while back on stream, but it's just kind of like, it's difficult because of latency as well. I'm in Australia, and a lot of the viewership, especially on Twitch, are from Europe or America, and then it's very difficult to get people without latency. Latency kills it, dude. But I'm not opposed to doing more things like that in the future if the right game comes across and we get some participation. That'd be kind of fun. What is my favorite color? Fun fact, it used to be blue, and kind of in a sense still is, because purple, you know, it's pretty damn close. But it was blue for a while, and then it kind of became green because I was looking for a change. and has become purple by default because I'm so overexposed to it. When I was designing the channel, I just went with the color purple out of nowhere because I just couldn't decide on what I wanted to do. And I'll put it up on screen. There is a demo, basically, way back when I was first making the YouTube channel. I took blue and green as my two favorite colors at the time and messed around with trying to design logos and appropriate branding for what I would use, and it just didn't stick very much. I wasn't very wholehearted in it. Jed absolutely hated it and, you know, made fun of me for how bad it looked. But at the same time, I was like, yeah, I kind of just went in the middle and went with purple. This was actually before I even played Skul too, which is why it kind of worked out for me. Because if you remember, my very first videos were Dragon Ball FighterZ way back when, and then we moved into things like Hollow Knight and Dark Souls 3. So this is before I even discovered Skul. And then Skul being purple themed, it was kind of meant to be, I guess. What's my favorite anime? This is a very loaded question. I can't really answer this. It's one of those subjective things, like, you know, asking someone what their favorite type of oxygen to breathe is. It's like, oh, dude, there's so many. So, I grew up with things like Evangelion, Pokemon, Dragon Ball, Digimon, the like, all that kind of stuff. I was very much a 90s into 2000s kind of kid, and for a lot of those it still rings true. I'm a big Dragon Ball nerd, even though I'm not the biggest fan of the latest stuff. I was very big into it and still kind of am. Pokemon I kind of fell out of in the third generation, but as far as modern anime, I watch most things. I've been really enjoying Blue Lock lately. I'm not a fan of sports anime. I've never watched one more than 4 episodes in, but Blue Lock is quite cool. Things like Vinland Saga, I've kind of always been a big fan of seinen, and a lot more of the adult tones that anime can take, like Berserk, Evangelion, stuff like that. Studio Gainax was a really big one for me, so Gurren Lagann and Kill la Kill are kind of in some of my top favorite. I think Kill la Kill is very underrated, but those who've seen that all the way through understand that that's not the case. It's quite top tier. But there's too many, dude. Mob Psycho, all that kind of stuff. That I watch anime. There's too many to name. It's too loaded. Would you ever think about visiting America? Or can I come visit you in the land of Upside Down? I wouldn't want to visit anywhere, really. I'm not a big fan of travel and never really planned to do so. I've had one major move in my life, and that was just moving 2 states away. I've never had much of the bug to go and visit places. To me, it's just... it never really hit me that much that I needed to go somewhere and see anything else. But can you come and visit me in the land of the Upside Down? Terrible idea. You don't want to come down here. We recently discovered a brand new species of trapdoor spider. It's awful here. What about roguelikes do you like so much? What was your first one, and is there a specific type of roguelike you would want to see created with a specific theme or mechanic in play? So... the thing I like about Rogue so much is it kind of takes that old school brand formula of like a Mario game or a Sonic game. Because when you think about it, Mario, Sonic, and a lot of the old school 2D platformers and stuff like that are effectively just roguelikes, because eventually you'll get a game over and you gotta start fresh. It's the same core idea, but roguelikes just added extra mechanics and extra flavor to it. And there is something kind of satisfying about a game that you can play and complete in around an hour's time, and then replay over and over again and still get a lot of fresh new fun out of it without it actually like falling apart, you know. I would rather a single roguelike that is over in an hour that I can play for 100 hours plus than a story-driven, highly, you know, budgeted AAA title that I beat in about 10 hours and never touch again. Like, obviously, 2 different flavors for 2 different types of people, but for me, fun is the key, and to me, having a lot of, like, replayability is a really cool thing. My first one, though, was Rogue Legacy, the very first one. I didn't even know what the hell a roguelike was. I just played the game and I thought, why is it called Rogue Legacy? There are no rogues in this game. There's like a thief kind of guy, but why would you name the whole game that? It's like Knight Legacy. I didn't even know what it was, but I played it, I enjoyed it, I sucked at it, I didn't understand it, but that was kind of my gateway. If there was a specific rogue that I'd want to see created with specific mechanics, they kind of already exist in a way. I really like, one of the reasons why I stuck with Skul so much is because I adore the way that they handle character swaps, right? Being able to find a Skul that is just a whole new dude, where you play a whole new way in the middle of your run, was just so wild. It's like, in most other rogues, you find a weapon, or a passive power-up, or a summon, or something like that, but it doesn't really shake up the actual way that you play that much. It's just an additive effect on top of how you already were playing. Things like Dead Cells, you get weapons and traps and things like that, but you're still the headless guy, right? You're still the prisoner. And then with things like Wizard of Legend, you might change your spells and you're flinging a whole new spell. but you're still dashing around and playing as the wizard. With Skul, you could run out there with little headless boy, throw your head, teleport around, and then all of a sudden you're Berserker, and you're slamming a giant sword. And then all of a sudden, you're the Grim Reaper, and you're summoning fissures of souls from the floor. It's like, damn, dude, it's so captivating. But what I would want to do is take something like that and blend it with some more of the things that I love in gaming in general. So RPGs and fighting games and things like that. So kind of like how Corpse Keeper has kind of blended things together. I'd want to see a 2D or even a 3D rogue that blends some of what Skul has done with some action combat a la Dark Souls fighting games, you know, skill-based combat with some RPG building in mind with weapons and talents and upgrades and things like that. But different characters as different classes as well. I don't want necessarily the Dead Cells, Hades, Curse of the Dead Gods kind of vibe where you're just one dude. I want like a cast of characters so that in the future they can add new dudes as DLC. What's your favorite ability in Skul with and without items? It is Death Trap, or Seal for some of the old school boys. It was such a favorite of mine that I branded my channel after it. The chains on the banner on YouTube, one of my custom intros that was made for me, thank you very much again, they all have chains, they all have this Death Trap motif to it, and that's where it came from. Because, as we'll get to later, I think there's a question in here about my favorite Skul. Arklich is my favorite boy, and was the first video that I made for Skul featured Arklich, so I think it's just like, it was meant to be, you know, that my favorite Skul and my favorite ability are all shared with the branding of the channel, you know. How much money would it take to get you to play Subnautica? 4 digits. And I don't mean fingers. What's your favorite recent game release? So I don't know how recent we really mean here. I'm just going to open up my Steam real quick. But as far as the absolute most recent game that I've played that I'm really loving, it's Clash Artifacts of Chaos right now. So much so that I bought the first 2 Xenoclash games shortly after reaching the 6-hour mark on playing the new one, because I just want to go back and see how this franchise came to be. But in recent memory, like, besides Clash, we've got Corpse Keeper, Dave the Diver. It's not really new, but I like things like For the King. Mortal Sim was a lot of fun. You see a lot of my favorites on the channel or on stream at the same time. There's a lot of these releases where I play them not just because I want to show them off, but because I genuinely really enjoy them. Hey Beelz, what was your first video game of memory, and why do you think you remember it? So my very first game of memory, and I believe it is the first game I ever owned, was Donkey Kong Country 3 on the Super Nintendo. And I think it just stuck with me because it just blew my little brain away so much when I played it that I couldn't fathom that this thing even existed. Like, what am I doing? I'm pressing buttons and stuff's happening on the screen. I'm making this monkey roll into rats on a wharf. I'm playing in a dude who's wearing a blue onesie. Like, it was so weird that my introduction to gaming was Kiddy Kong and Dixie Kong, and not even Donkey and Diddy, not even Mario. It was Kiddy Kong, which is a really weird way to get introduced to a whole new way of life, but okay, that's crazy. Any plans for the upcoming months and years? Updates on the new PC progression, stream schedule, or just trying new types of games or visiting old ones? So, plans in general are difficult for me to make and to keep because life, as we know, just likes to get in the way. But I am planning on getting a new PC at some point during the year, but with the way that life goes, expenses here and there, it's kind of hard to save and plan things. But I do want to get a new PC upgrade. Mine is kind of potato, if you've ever wondered. I think I'm rocking a 1060 Ti in this. 16 gigs. It's an old rig at this point, dude. It's a 16 gig 1060. I've had this for ages, and I've just not updated it because, funny enough, playing little 2D roguelikes like Skul isn't that demanding. But now that I've kind of pushed streaming more and playing bigger and better games like Elden Ring and stuff like that, it's noticeably taking a toll. Plus, it's very slow on the work front. If I got a PC upgrade, I could render and edit and do a lot of those things a lot faster and generally just get a better workflow. But streaming schedule changes, I don't know about streaming schedule changes. I did have an idea that at one point I wanted to take one of those 3 days and completely shift the time scheduling of it. So like if Monday stream was actually in the morning for me, like instead of being what it normally is right now, which is like 1:30 to roughly 11:30, it'd be like 9 in the morning my time to 5 in the afternoon my time. So it would actually catch a whole different audience. Or just cut Mondays entirely. As far as trying new types of games or visiting old ones, I'm always down to revisit old games, and I tried out new types of games all the time. If it looks interesting to me, I'll give it a whirl, dude. There's really not that much that I'm opposed to. I mean, the fraud type game stream, if you never saw the fraud type game stream, I recommend it just from a what the hell am I looking at standpoint. What's the game that you're currently most excited for that will come out this year? Honestly, I have no idea. I don't have that many hype like games on my list that I get that excited for anymore. The last one that I had that I was that yippee about was Elden Ring, because I've been waiting on that for a long time, and I'm a fan of Souls games and stuff like that in general. But as far as just, I'll give you just like a couple of quick upcoming ones. I don't think they're coming out this year, but just in general, I'm looking forward to obviously Silksong and Crowsworn. I think those two are the Metroidvanias that I'm looking forward to the most. I'm looking forward to this game called Pal World, which is kind of like an off-brand Pokemon, but there's guns and rocket launches, and it's, I don't even understand what I'm looking at. Apparently it might come out this year, but we'll see. And in general, any potential movement forward on new fighting games like Project L, I'm kind of looking forward to. That one might be kind of wild, and we'll see how that goes. The League fighter that they're making with Riot, that might be kind of cool. Oh my god, is that TB? Yo, this is one of the OGs. This is from way back in the day when I had less than 10 dudes watching me live. Throw some respect on this person's. So, as someone who's enjoyed watching you grow, what was the most difficult advancement in your career? Either complexity, how long to set something up, etc. Okay, so the most difficult thing in terms of like complexity was probably just getting started in general, because I didn't have a lot of the things I needed to kind of get everything set up that way. So I invested in like the Blue Yeti microphone. I did that, but mostly learning how to edit. Before I did any of that, I did a little bit of vanilla WoW streaming on camera, actually. There's 007 Gamer, who still hangs out in the community. He's seen me with webcam on, all that kind of stuff. He remembers the good old days. But I wanted to elevate YouTube a little bit more than just streaming, because streaming without doing anything else is really hard to get noticed. So I thought, I'm going to hang back and do YouTube. So learning to edit in Premiere Pro, learning how to use Photoshop. I'd never used Photoshop or Premiere Pro prior to doing YouTube. A lot of the most difficult things didn't take necessarily that much time to set up in general, as it took a lot of time dragged out over the last 2 years. So I'm constantly trying to improve on my Photoshop stuff. I'm constantly trying to get new edits to come in and just, do fun new things for you guys whenever I get the time to do them, because I am just one person. I don't have, I don't have hired editors or thumbnail creators and stuff like that. I'm not big enough. I'm not big boy enough to have that kind of stuff yet. But to give you a really vague but really weird answer to that, it's that my most difficult advancement hasn't happened yet. I feel like somewhere in the future I'm going to be given a crossroads where making a really big choice is going to have a big impact on things, and I don't think I've had that yet. But the most complex thing has been just the consistency of trying to keep up with what my brain wants to do throughout the entirety of doing this. How did your leave for health reasons a little while back affect your life in regards to both streaming and however much you're willing to share outside of it? So I'm someone who's been kind of sick most of my life. I was the kid who was always prone to that kind of thing. I always had a summer cold, hay fever. I grew up with asthma. I had a bug called osteomyelitis infect my lower L2 vertebrae. I've nearly died a couple of times when I was very, very young due to bad asthma attacks and infections and stuff like that. It's just the way that I kind of deal with life, is I know that something is probably going to jump out and happen to me at some point. The most recent one where I had my infection, you just roll with the punches. It hurts from a monetary standpoint because streaming and YouTube is my full-time right now, so if I can't do either one of them, it really hurts, and I therefore can't do much for my family. I can't do much in terms of bills and stuff like that. So it'd be the same as how most people are when they get knocked out of work from health stuff. When did you start playing video games? Also, when did you decide you wanted to make streaming your career? So I started playing games when I was like 5. Like I got my Super Nintendo back when I was like 5, 6 years old. I was like barely into year 1, I think, when I first picked up my little SNES controller and played DKC 3, as well as some of the others. Like I had, the Mario Bros collection eventually. I got a bunch of the Disney games. I vividly remember playing the Super Nintendo Lion King and Jungle Book games. Those things are nightmares. Toy Story was a good time. Stuff like that. But it's weird. I didn't decide I wanted to do it as a career so much. When COVID hit, I more or less just wasn't able to continue advancing with what I was doing before. Some people know this already, but I was doing aged care at the time. I'd been trained in it, I learned how to do it, and I was looking to work in facility care or home care, looking after people, who didn't want to go into facility care, understandably. But COVID kind of messes all those things up. And so more of like a hobby, I decided I'm going to do a bit of YouTube. And then from YouTube, people asked, you know, have you ever streamed before? And it's like, I did do a bit of streaming with WoW, but I might go back and do some Skul streams. And then once monetization was viable and it kind of kicked in, may as well push it, dude. I mean, I'm not doing anything else at the moment. May as well just see how this goes. And you might find that a lot of other people around the same time, around the 2019-2020 mark, kind of saw a boost in that. Most people kind of agree that online entertainment saw a massive rise as kind of like the smallest silver lining from COVID, because everyone's inside looking for something to watch. What's the most important part of a video game in your opinion? Fun. To me, a game has to be fun. I think Reggie from Nintendo was right on the money when he said, if a game's not fun, why bother? I think that you can have a game be super difficult, like a Souls-type game, and still be fun. I get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I think that puzzles can be fun if it's the right kind of game, but I think it needs to be fun in general. Like, whatever audience you're aiming at, you have to make them stop and really feel like they're having a good time. It's part of why I don't find too much joy in games that don't have very good replayability, like walking simulator type of games, where you're more like watching a movie play out, because once you finish them, there's very little reason to go back and do it again. And while I can say that I might have enjoyed myself, I don't think I had that much fun, you know? It's kind of like the difference between watching Schindler's List and watching Emperor's New Groove. One of them isn't so much fun as it is an experience, and the other one is fun, and I want to watch it again. How do you like to enjoy your day? Just hanging out. Like, I don't like to necessarily go places and do things like that. I'm very much a shut-in. Well, not in the literal sense, but I'm an at-home kind of guy. I don't like to go out and party and do all that kind of stuff. I'll stay home and hang out with the family and watch TV or browse YouTube and stuff like that. That's just my chill. If you had to eat one dish every day for the rest of your life, what would it be? Preferably an edible one. You know, those chocolate plates and bowls that you can get? I'd prefer to have some of those, but I mean, if worse comes to worse, maybe some fine china. I mean, if I'm going to be eating dishes, I may as well eat, you know, rich. Ghosty, dear Beelz, I know I start most of my messages this way. It's hard finding a question I haven't heard you answer yet, whether it's about a game, specific skull run, the reason why you don't destroy skulls when leaving a room, and so on. One thing I'm curious about, how are you doing, old friend? Hope the family's holding up. I'm doing okay, dude. I hope you're doing the same. Family is holding up. Banshee emote, more Metroidvanias in the future. Yes, Metroidvanias I'm always down to play, and they normally happen over on Twitch. So if you're, you know, a YouTube dude and you don't get to see a lot of those kind of things, head over to the VOD channel. We play a lot of Metroidvanias. Most recent memory, we played some Death's Gambit and some Blasphemous and things like that just in the last couple of months at the end of 2022. I'm looking forward to some more prime Metroidvanias that we can jump into moving forward into the year. What was your favorite Sparklight gadget, and why am I such a great guy? You're a great guy because you're you and no one else can be you. So this is a fun reference. I played a little game, a little indie release game like Zelda in a sense, just different branding of it. I mistook it for like a roguelite mixed with Zelda. It's not really a rogue at all. It's just a Zelda-like game called Sparklight. You can still find it on my channel. That's way back in the early days. From memory, my favorite gadget? Dude, now you're asking me to go back a long time. I think it was a little exploding drone. Unless I'm mistaken, I could set and forget a little exploding bomb and then detonate it from a distance. That's always fun for me. What's your favorite starter Pokemon? So, my favorite starter Pokemon period is Torchic, because it becomes Blaziken. And even though it's a little hot chicken, I like the little hot chicken, he becomes a double drumstick kick monster and then becomes the Turbo Inferno Rooster of Destruction, okay? Blaziken is amazing and has been my favorite for a long time, but I'll throw an extra little fun one in there for you. My very first Pokemon ever and my first starter was Bulbasaur. I was a Bulbasaur kind of guy. I don't know why. I thought Squirtle looked boring, and I thought Charmander was just like, you know, eh. And I saw Bulbasaur, and I'm like, oh, he looks really cool, and I went with him. Which, I now understand people like to associate the Bulbasaur pickers with the kids who ate glue, but believe me, at the time, it was cool. If you didn't do YouTube, what job would you have? I don't know. I probably would have leaned back into my aged care training and tried to get back into facility care because I have qualifications for it, but I wasn't really enjoying it in the first place, so I may have just kind of moved away from it in general. I have no idea, to be honest. It's too difficult. Will you be playing any long-form content for the YouTube, non-roguelike RPGs? Do you like Golden Gay Times? I love Golden Gay Times. As far as long-form content, it would all come down to kind of like audience reception. I would have to do them probably a bit like how I'm doing Clash Artifacts of Chaos right now, where I take effectively 2 to 3 hours of gameplay and really chop it down into more like viewable watch times of like under an hour kind of thing. because otherwise you end up with the Elden Ring problem where I didn't want to cut anything, and I just wanted to keep that as a time capsule of my time playing the game, so I can go back and watch it whenever and catch every single moment. But that's a lot of hours of gameplay, and I don't think that's too digestible for people who aren't like playing along with me or really just need a little bit of background noise maybe. It depends on people and what they want to see. I'd always be down to do more long-form RPGs and stuff like that. It just depends on what people want to see. Is your accent truly Australian? I think I've read the story from other people, but it would be cool to hear it firsthand. This is my natural speaking accent and voice. The reason why this thing kind of comes up once in a while is I made the mistake of telling people that others have second-guessed my accent in the past. So I used to work with some people, at least one person has accused me of having a Kiwi accent or being from New Zealand in general. I grew up with Kiwi friends. I don't think their accent necessarily rubbed off on me in any regard. I don't think I catch myself, you know, oh, Nubru anytime, which is where that joke comes from, is people keep saying I have a Kiwi accent. I don't. Other than that, I had the worst one. Oh no, the worst one I had was I had someone on voice chat when I was talking in WoW way back in like this goes back like 10 years or so. One, they thought I was Asian, and two, they thought I was British. They're like, you know, oh, it's the Asian British guy in the voice chat, and I'm like, you mean me? And they're like, yeah, you sound like you're like Chinese with a bit of a bit of an Asian accent, like you moved to the UK like, you know, a couple of years ago. You know, it's kind of 50-50, and I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I made the mistake of telling the community this, and now it won't escape me. Would you be interested in doing topic streams or part of streams every now and then, like anime, movies, nerd, food, whatever discussions? Would you find it too boring or without playing something? So that would also come down to the audience. That would come down to you guys. If you wanted me to have like a segment where I take like an hour or two out and I would just like talk about stuff, you know, like just the whole just chatting thing. I've never like tried to push it or force it. I kind of do it here and there whenever I've got to spare like 15-20 minutes in between segments or in between ending the stream, and I'll just chat with you guys about stuff. But if you wanted to have that be more of a dedicated thing where you guys want me to like read things or look at things, like I went through the IGN, what was it, the IGN's top 100 games of all time or whatever it was with you guys on stream at some point. Stuff like that. If you want me to do things like that, let me know and I'll consider it. Depends on what you guys want to do. Could you please let your mods out of the basement? No. Get back in there. What's your opinion on fighting games like Guilty Gear, Street Fighter, etc.? Do you have a favorite? And if so, what character do you like to play the most? So I love fighting games. I'm not good at them at all. I'm okay at them. Some people say I'm better than that, but I always like to say I'm basically mediocre because I've seen what really good players are like, and it's far from what I am. I don't play as many anymore. I originally got into fighting games more as a viewer. It's kind of like a spectator sport kind of thing. Back in the old days, watching Street Fighter 4, Marvel, stuff like that, Evo moments, you know, the famous Daigo parry, all these amazing moments. But my favorite type of fighting game is typically anime fighters, because once you touch something like Marvel or Dragon Ball or Guilty Gear or Blaze Blue, all those kind of games, suddenly touching Street Fighter feels very, very different, and I don't like how limited some of these games are. So Street Fighter typically works on like a 2 to 3 hit sequence into a special move. Now, some characters can break that rule, but you look at a character like a Ryu or a Ken, where it's like normal, special, or normal, special. Jump in, do 1 or 2 hits, special. And it's very restricted in combo potential. You can do a bit more Source now, but traditionally, it's nowhere near as flashy as anime fighters, and I love the flash that they get. Guilty Gear combos are insane. Dragon Ball fighters, all that kind of stuff. Blaze Blue. All of these games get the real Source going. If you've ever seen Marvel 3, like just watch some Marvel do. That stuff is insane. I love when you can put personality in there. But my most favorite type of character to play is always the flashy one, the one that has like really cool and sick looking combos. I was a Cell player in Dragon Ball. I liked characters like Ino and Chip in Guilty Gear, stuff like that. Is Beelz your first ever channel, and were you always going to do roguelikes, or did you have other plans? Beelz is my first ever channel. I actually only ever had like just a personal channel just for watching YouTube in general, but I made Beelz as my first ever channel dedicated towards making videos. And no, I didn't always plan to do rogues. The very first stuff I uploaded was Dragon Ball FighterZ, then I did some Hollow Knight, I did some Dark Souls 3. I kind of just made whatever. Initially, the channel was just a hobby for me to make stupid things to entertain myself and take up some time and see if anyone out there shared my, I don't know, my viewpoints, my thoughts, my excitement, my enthusiasm for some of these games, and it kind of took off from there. I threw roguelikes in there just because it's what I played at the time, like whatever I was enjoying, I made a video for it and that was it. I'm sure too many people have asked you this, but with how much Skul you play, who's your favorite? Realizing I've been asked this before. And more interesting, has that answer changed between patches? If so, could you go into some more detail about it? So it's Arclich, and always has been, probably always will be. I answered it a little bit earlier on, but basically Arclich was the first legendary I found in the game. Not only that, but aesthetically speaking, with the chains, the big undead daddy motif. Like, Skul is a little skeleton dude, but I feel like Arclich really embodies the proper undead skeleton, like the big lich kind of thing. Reaper can be interpreted as a spirit or a ghost or a deity in some way, and a lot of the other Skuls are based on, you know, soldiers and real things, but Lich is just straight up a big old bone boy, and I find him really cool, and his aesthetics really pleasing. I know about your relationship to Dead Cells, but is there a chance you'll ever come back and play it again? It's got some really good updates, and I'd love to see you play it. So this is something that was secretly, but not so secretly anymore, something that I plan to do eventually, which was to step back into Dead Cells at some point. Mostly part of the reason why I haven't done it yet is because there's always new things coming out, and rather than step back into Dead Cells, I wanted to keep things moving a little bit more forward, which is why I also haven't stepped back into things like Wizard of Legend and Dungreed as much lately, because I want to keep covering newer titles that come out, give them their due, like Corpse Keeper, etc., and make sure that they get some time in the spotlight so that people can enjoy what's coming out fresh, because there's a ton of Dead Cell stuff out there already. There's a lot of really good creators making stuff for that, and me jumping back into it while being really fun is something that's a little bit intimidating because of how much really is in there, but don't worry, at some point I probably will come back and do some Dead Cells. What are your thoughts on playing an MMO with your viewers? So, despite the fact that for a good 13, 14 years of my life I played WoW and other MMOs in between, I don't think MMOs are doing that well at the moment. I think they're on life support and are a dying breed. And we can see that because the best MMOs that are around today are the same ones that were around back in the old days. So WoW is still top tier, Final Fantasy is still top tier, and Guild Wars 2 is still top tier. Most of the new ones that have come out in the last 5 to 7 years or so just aren't all that good. Although, arguably, Guild Wars 2 is barely breaching that time gap, but you know what I mean, right? A lot of the new ones just aren't hitting right. People don't have the attention span, the time, the lifestyle, or they just don't make them the way they used to. I think they're kind of dying out. But at the same time, I don't have the time for it anymore. With what I'm doing now, I can't make, you know, all these other videos and stream and stuff and play an MMO. No, I simply wouldn't have the time. Have you ever considered streaming any older games, like on an emulator? I can think of lots of stuff on the NDS, SNES, etc. It'd be fun to watch you go through. Probably a dumb question since you generally go for newer stuff. No. Fun fact for you. For a little while there, I was dangerously close to just starting up a stream and popping in some retro games and doing some like N64, PS2 gaming. And it's something I might still do in the future. I got a massive itch not too long ago to go back and play Mystical Ninjas 1 and 2 on the N64. And if you know what those are, then you're the real ones. You understand how great those games were. And just in general, some of the older classics, like there's some N64 titles that I played a lot when I was a kid. Maybe you guys did as well, or you didn't, and we could like go through them again, play some PS2, some PS1, and kind of have like a retro gaming day, or, you know, make it a regular kind of thing and play through some of the old classics. I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. It would just come down to viewer reception and if you guys would want to see that. It's kind of something that's been done to death though. Like, there are a lot of content creators out there who do retro gaming, but it would all depend on if you care about me doing it at all. Otherwise, I can stick to the formula and I'll play those things on my own. It all depends on what you guys want to see. Little hypothetical question for me. If Skul never existed, what game would be your core game? Also applied to the present. If Skul suddenly got deleted from the world, what would be your new cornerstone? So, if Skul never existed, I don't know what would be a core game, because originally I was just making things for the sake of making things. I probably would have continued to go forward with everything from the rest of the Souls series into Elden Ring, and then things like the fighting games that I covered, Dragon Ball, Guilty Gear, stuff like that. The only main reason Skul became like a core game and a cornerstone is because it kind of blew up and people really wanted to see more. And when you've got an audience that's saying, you know, more, well, you should give them more, I guess. They want to see this. They really enjoy it. It would come down to if anything else grabbed. I mean, there's just as much possibility that my Hollow Knight playthrough decided to pick up and people want to see more Hollow Knight stuff with mods and things like that. Or Souls 3, you know, I become a PvP guy like the classics, you know, become another prod. I could do lore stuff. I could do anything, you know. All these kind of things could have happened, or any other new game could have happened. I could have been another Hades guy. I could have been another this or that. it all just comes down to what sticks, and you can't really plan these things. They kind of just happen. You see it a lot where people will have, you know, a lot of uploads where it's like, you know, a typical viewership, and then all of a sudden a new thing exists and it blows up and that becomes their new identity. It's like, you can't control that. Dear Beelz, as an avid enjoyer of your works, I have a question. I know that for your channel and streams you play a great many games, mostly consisting of rogues, and I was wondering how you decide what games to play, what to stream, and if any games to just enjoy by yourself. So for YouTube, it's mostly rogues. I just, if I see a potential for it, I do it. I try and avoid deck builders a little bit, not entirely. I've done some deck builders, but mostly because I am not that big into them. Like, out of all the rogue types out there, I think deck builders are the ones that I gel with the least. Not because I don't like them necessarily, but because, I don't know, there's less creative potential for me to do, like, things in those games that come across the way that my personality wants to. Like, in Skul, I can take dumb items, do silly builds, and do stupid stuff with my characters, and just annoy people with my stupidity. In deck builders, it would be like, oh, I took this card, and everyone screamed about it. Or I played this card at this time, and everyone screamed about it. It just doesn't come across as well for me. But in terms of what to stream, almost anything. If it's new and it's fresh and I think it's going to be cool, or if it's old and it's bold and people think it's going to be cool, I'll put almost anything on stream. There's a few things I just will avoid entirely, but for the most part, if you've seen the Fraud Day stream, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, dude. Oh, and very quickly, for things that I would just enjoy by myself, it's almost anything that falls outside the groove where I know that stream would find it boring or YouTube wouldn't care. So there's a lot of RPGs that might fall into that category that I think are too big for stream and are too boring for YouTube, and that they just wouldn't care. So I kind of avoid those kind of games for both of those and just get them for myself. Okay, I know I've answered the Beelz question already, but I put Cheese's one in here just because it's funny when I read the line, why a reference to the hit book Bible? Not the Bible, just hit book Bible. I could just see someone now, hey dude, did you check out the latest chapter of Bible? If there were two people on the moon and one of them killed the other with a rock, would that be fucked up or what? Dude, that would be so incredibly fucked up. Dude, could you imagine? Although, wait, what if there were secretly 3 dudes on the moon, and the third dude recorded those 2 dudes on the moon with his phone and uploaded it, and that's how we know about there being 2 dudes on the moon with rocks, right? Dave Matthews, that was his name. All-time favorite band. What would you have done if YouTube and Twitch didn't work out? Most massive thing you possess. Okay, so I've covered the most favorite band thing before, but Korn is my most favorite band, I guess. That kind of goes back to my youth more than anything. I kind of grew up with that kind of stuff playing in my head. My gateway to metal with things like, going right back to like the softest, like Linkin Park, into Disturbed, into Korn, into eventually things like Slipknot, Insomnium, Amon Amarth, and it just gets heavier from there and more broad from there. But I have a soft spot in my heart for Korn. It has that kind of groovy danciness to it, like, it's metal, but at the same time, even they admit that it's more like a funky groove kind of thing going on. But I've got a real soft spot for them, dude. I love I love Jonathan Davis and the rest of those boys. Do spider actually really big in Australia? Need proof? No, you don't. You don't need proof. We recently discovered a new species of trapdoor spider, and I don't recommend that you look it up or find out about it because it is a nightmare. And yes, we do get some nasty ones down here. Also, how are you guys doing everything upside down? You see, that's the funny thing. We're not. You are. Barlan but ban him right now. If everything is upside down, what the hell is with these if everything is upside down in Australia, where in the world is everything sideways? Oh, that's easy. Japan. How do you not know that's Japan? It's why they write that way. Beelz, how do you rig the games, and may I get the rig engine as well? Literally, if we're talking literally here and not even the meme, Mr. Bakanudo. You can go check out his YouTube channel. I'm gonna drop, you know what? I'm gonna drop a link to his channel in the description of this video. Check out Mr. Bakanudo. He was the one who made the mod pack that allows me to take whatever I want at the start. Also, just thank and praise him in general because the work he has done is ridiculous. Does Beelz secretly play Barland Wonderland? Is Beelz secretly Barland from Barland Wonderland? By the way, I alternate between Wonderland and Wonderworld because I get mixed up all the time. Ban both of these. Do you feel like you've pigeonholed yourself as the Skul guy, and given how much content you've made from the game and how often you've beaten it, done meme runs, etc., do you worry that you've dipped into that well too much and the content you can make from Skul vids will dry up? As an addendum to that, what are the type of content do you think you could branch out to if and when you rang Skul dry? So Orpheus brings up a really good point. Now, as far as pigeonholing is concerned, this is an identity crisis that a lot of people on YouTube, Twitch, and just in the creative medium themselves get stuck in, and they have a hard time getting out of it. It's why the dream is to be variety, or to kind of just be able to do whatever you want. If you look at creators like PewDiePie, Markiplier, the Game Grumps, it doesn't even matter what niche you've got. Like, all of these people inevitably expand into doing a multitude of different things creatively so that they don't become too stagnant, so that they don't burn out, and so that they can keep some sort of relevance going forward and not just be stuck in one thing. And for me, that is a fear, because I know that Skul won't last forever. There is 100% the possibility that one day Skul will just be done. They won't do updates for it anymore. Skul 2 won't exist, and interest in the game will dry up, and my channel will as well, and then suddenly we just won't be here doing this anymore. But to be a little bit less doomery, it would just kind of be like, what can I do? Like, Twitch, on that side of things, I do all sorts of different games and stuff over there. I actually don't give as much attention to Skul on Twitch anymore as I used to, prior to the most recent updates coming out, just to keep things from burning out and to keep people playing new games and not being too hard stuck in the identity of the channel. On YouTube, it would just be whatever else is there, whatever I'm doing. It would come down to audience reception and what I do. I could play fighting games, I could play RPGs, I could play other roguelikes in general. If I suddenly became a Hades 2 dude and then Skul fell to the wayside and it was all about Hades 2 or Silksong and stuff like that, then, I mean, so be it. Besides that, it would also come down to me to actively try and innovate my brand, my content, and what I do, and have other stuff that I can promote and push towards people. I've considered doing all the other normal stuff before, having like news where I talk about things that I've seen, reacting to controversies and dramas in the gaming sphere, stupid stuff like that, and all sorts of different things. And overall, I kind of stopped and realized that there's enough of that in the world already, and I don't know if people really care about what I have to say about it. So short answer, I don't know. Long answer, we'll see. If you could escape Australia, what would be the first thing that you do now that you don't need a gravity harness? Okay, so first of all, if I escaped Australia and don't need my gravity harness, I would immediately need to learn how to walk upside down so that I could still feel close to home. If you could live in a fictional universe, movies, shows, anime, manga, books, games, etc., and get the powers in said universe, which one would you choose and why? In-universe rules apply. So this is one that I was asked once before, and I gave a pretty rushed answer that was pretty bad. Honestly, I probably would choose Pokemon, only because out of every fictional world that I think of, most of them have some sort of crisis or big drama or issue that's genuinely, for the common person, frightening as all hell. Like, if you chose Dragon Ball, it'd be great to say, oh, I want to be a Super Saiyan in Dragon Ball. But then, you know, they go through a lot of abuse, you know, the training, the getting beat up kind of thing. Like, you don't want to end up being a Yamcha. So you'd have to dedicate your life to training to keep up with pace. You'd die, get blown up, stuff like that. You don't want to live in somewhere like Berserk's world. And, I mean, even something like Digimon is kind of scary. Pokemon, I feel like, is the perfect blend of action-packed while also being calm and fun and just chill to enjoy. If 10-year-old kids can run around, you know, run around the countryside and nothing bad happens and everyone's having a great time, what a world to be in, dude. What a world to be in. Beelz, is YouTube and streaming a full-time job for you? And as a smaller YouTuber, does it pay enough to cover all your expenses, bills, shopping, and other payments? Yes, it is my full-time. It wasn't for a long while there. There was a stint going back a little while where I had the sub and the viewership requirements to get monetized on YouTube, but it just hadn't kicked in yet. I had some problems that I had to go through YouTube directly and speak to like support in order to get that fixed up. But a short time ago, it basically became available to me to just work on it full time and invest all of my resources into doing this. So much so that now it really is proper full time. I need to upgrade my PC and continue to push this forward as much as I possibly can. It does cover bills and expenses. I think people assume that doing this kind of thing, you earn a bucket ton of money. And you really aren't going to earn that kind of money unless you're a really big-time content creator. Like, I earn enough to get me and my family by just fine. Like, I'm not necessarily struggling or anything like that. I'm not on death's door, but I'm also not rich. I'm far from rich. Like, I'm I'm saving up to replace my 1060 and get a work PC, which would be, you know, a working expense. And I'm saving for that. I can't just dip in and do that, dude. I can't do that. Bills need to be paid around here, don't worry. What are some games that you would never play? Safe for work, obviously. So, sport games come to mind. I don't care about games like FIFA, 2K, Madden, stuff like that. I don't care. The closest thing to a sport game I'd play is in the Mario series, like Mario Tennis and stuff like that. And that's because they take some of the realism out of it and it's more of a fun game. It's a video game at that point. I'm also not really big on battle royales in general. The ones that I've gotten into and played more of, like Rumbleverse, rest in peace, you were too young, were mostly because the game itself was genuinely fun outside of its genre. Like, I really enjoyed the fighting components of Rumbleverse. But something like Fortnite, COD, things like that, nah, I'm not opposed to FPS, it's just I'm used to a particular type of FPS. I played a lot of Halo when I was younger, but I wouldn't be seen playing any, like, you know, modern Halo or COD, Fortnite, stuff like that. Genshin, nah, dude, I kind of miss those things. But generally, also maybe puzzlers. I'm not a big fan of, like Candy Crush and stuff like that. To me, they kind of get boring real quick, like Match 3 things, like, bleh. Do you ever plan to have a meet and greet with your fans since you began to grow a lot as a content creator? I'm just not big enough. I am nowhere near big enough to do meet and greets. Plus, at the same time, being in Australia and having an audience that's dominantly outside of my country, I think a meet and greet would more rely on me leaving and going to see you guys rather than have it here. I feel like I've got a very small percentage of Australian viewers and a very high percentage of US and European viewers, so that would rely on me to leave, and I don't want to leave, damn. If you could make a guest appearance in any game you've played so far, doesn't matter which genre, what game would you like to be featured in if the devs were to suddenly reach out to you? So, any really. I don't think I'd be really picky about anything like that. I mean, if you're at a point where a dev wants to, like, import you into a game as a guest, that's top honors, dude. That's really, really high praise, and it's not something that I would be very eager to turn down or say no to unless I had really good reason to. But yeah, dude, just about anything. It's not even about, like, you know, having bragging rights. It's more of, what did I do to deserve this? Why are you doing this? And for the love of God, don't make me important in this whatsoever. Just I don't know, put a purple bee somewhere in the game. Too much. No. What's some advice to give for trying to do this as one content creator to another with being able to focus on it? When it comes to food, what's the type of dish you've wanted to try and or make? When it comes to food, I'm not a very big foodie. I don't really care too much as long as it's okay. But something that I've always wanted to try that I've just never gone out of my way to try is takoyaki, because I've always heard that it's decent. I've had friends tell me it's decent, but I'd be more worried about things like texture and taste. But besides that, it just seems like something fun to try. When it comes to the important part of the question here, the content creator stuff, being able to focus on it, it really is all just driven by your own drive and desire to do something. I think if you are doing this kind of thing, you kind of need to have that desire to make stuff and want it to be as good as you expect it to be, and really push that and take every aspect of it and improve it. I wanted to make sure that my audio was better from the days back when I used a headset with a microphone attached to it, so I knew that I wanted to make it entertaining despite the fact that my audio was kind of garbage. So I learned how to edit, I learned how to do a bit of Photoshop stuff, I wanted it to be fun, and I eventually upgraded my microphone and tried to improve everything step by step, little by little. But to stay focused on it, it just takes some determination and some willpower to, like, keep it going. You have days where you don't want to work on it, you don't want to do videos, you don't want to record, your head hurts, your voice is broken, you know, everything's just kind of sucky, and you just can't be bothered to sit there and stare at an editing software and listen to your own voice for any more time. I get so sick of hearing my own voice in editing, dude, you have no idea. Biggest advice, stick to it. If you're passionate about it and you really want to do it, then you'll push and you'll stick through the hard times. Have you ever been in real danger, house fire or car accident? So I've never been in a really bad car accident, mostly, like, you know, fender benders, bumper thumpers, all that kind of stuff, little things here and there, slipping on ice and all that. But fire, funny that you mentioned that. My house as a child didn't light up on fire, but as a really weird way to describe to you what happened, where my childhood house was, I've only ever lived in 2 homes, by the way, my child house and now. When I was a kid, about a block and a half behind was a pub or a bar, you know, but you know what a pub is. And then across the road on the other side of our house was another pub. There were 2 pubs within 2 blocks of each other, and we were wedged in the middle. And one night, the pub that was behind us was set on fire, and it went up. It's a pub, all right? It went up like crazy. And so one night, I'm woken up. It's like midnight. I'm woken up. My mother is freaking out. There's a fire outside. Everyone is outside with buckets and hoses and stuff. The priority was to wet everything. We had like 3 people outside wetting rooftops and spraying down trees, because if it's damp, it may not catch on fire that quickly or that easily. And that was the closest that I had to being caught in a house fire. I was an asthmatic, a chronic asthmatic at the time. So while I wasn't in the fire, I was still in absolute danger because the smoke was everywhere. And I was taken out, put in a car, driven a couple of blocks away, and I was left there, and we were waiting for everything to kind of boil over. It was kind of crazy. If you were able to work with a company on designing a game, what would you create? Thinking about art, music, gameplay, story, etc. So maybe an RPG. A lot of people might sit on me being the roguelike guy, and then I would design my own dream rogue, and I would do that if I couldn't do an RPG, but I grew up with my most like favorite genre being RPGs, going back to like my first time playing a Final Fantasy, to things like Kingdom Hearts, and then everything in between, right? Action RPGs, the Devil May Cry stuff, things like that. I love stats. I love leveling up. I like equipping gear. I like the you know, the grind, as it were. I'm just a big sucker for things like that, and they were always some of my best memories. Was just spending hours on end grinding through plot, grinding through levels, finding new gear. Like, you go out of your way to find this super secret hidden cave with a really powerful enemy in there, and then there's this big shiny chest at the end, and you open it up and there's this god tier suit of armor or a really powerful sword, and you're like, yes! Like Dragon Quest VIII, for example, on the PS2. Oh, memories, my guy, memories. Did you ever have a game where you had to bite through, like not having fun for a time? Oh, Barland Wonderworld. But Wonderland. Barland Wonderland. 100%. It's not a game. It's torture. It's not a video game. It is absolute torture. Hey, Beelz. So I took a long time to decide what to ask, and I came up with a fantastic question. Let's say, hypothetically, you woke up one day and your life is essentially reset. You're 6 years old and you retain all of your limited, because your brain is smoother than a flat rock at the bottom of a waterfall, really, current knowledge and memories. What would you change about your entire life, and how do you think it would affect things? Am I getting an isekai in this hypothetical situation? I would invest in shitcoin. All right, guys, that's the end of all of my questions. Once again, if yours didn't get answered, it might be because there was some duplicates in there, or just because I had to be super selective. I don't know how long this video is right now. Normally, these things aren't that long, but holy damn, I did not expect so many questions to be in there. There is a ton that I just could not add because I knew this was going to run long. Another big thank you to all of you for dropping your questions down into the channel who participated on the Discord. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was really fun going through and answering all of these and seeing the kind of curious things that you guys have rolling around upstairs. But with all of that said and done, I've got to get out of here. I hope you guys have enjoyed learning something, listening to me ramble on. I don't know, dude. It's been a long recording. I have no idea what I'm doing anymore. I will see you all next time. Have a good one.